This chainsaw is running on what's called synthetic fuel. No fossil oil and gas are used to power this motor. So what is the future of synthetic fuels and how are they made? Hello and welcome to the Climate Show with me, Tom Heap. It's been a week of wild weather across the globe with extreme heat in North America, China and Southern Europe. In a moment we'll be looking at what effect those high temperatures can have on your body. Also on the programme, could fossil-free fuel power us towards net zero? And the petroleum minister from one of the world's poorest countries tells me he needs to exploit fossil fuels to feed his people.
Which death comes first? Which death is more lovely? Is it you dying of poverty or you dying because of climate change, whatever it caused?
But first, it has been extremely hot in many parts of the world, and we know that can be uncomfortable and dangerous. But how does it actually affect the body? Well, someone who knows what very high temperatures are like, indeed exceeding those in the Mediterranean, is our science correspondent Thomas Moore, who had a time in 50 degrees centigrade, is that right, this week?
Correct.
Wow. And also with us is Dr. Anna Moore, who's an expert in the respiratory system and also has been looking at heat and climate change. Thomas, first of all, tell us why you were there, what it was like. You were in a chamber getting very hot.
Yes, so I was guinea pig 16 in a study of the impact of heat on the human body. So they wheeled me into a chamber, heated to 50 degrees. The humidity is 25%, which is a lot lower than it would be now. It's about half what it would be on a summer's day in the UK. And essentially they took measurements of my body, my blood pressure, my heart rate, my core temperature. And over an hour, all those measurements began to change, even though I was lying down, even though I was doing nothing.
And later they had you on an exercise bike as well, I gather.
And then there were dramatic changes.
What did it feel like?
Really unpleasant. On the exercise bike, I wasn't pushing anywhere near the kind of limit I could do outside, but I was absolutely shattered. My heart rate went up to 170. My core temperature also rose very, very quickly, more than 1.5 degrees, to the point that doctors would say in normal times I would have a fever.
You could almost feel your body sort of collapsing a little bit.
Absolutely, really unpleasant.
So Anna, what was actually happening? Give us a clue what was going on inside.
Well, it sounds as though there were lots of things going on. I think your body will have reacted by trying to make the blood vessels near the skin bigger so that you could kind of radiate some more heat out. Your face probably went a little bit red, did it? And also probably tried to make you sweat a little bit so that you kind of...
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot, which is a very effective method of cooling, as you'll know if you put a just cool cloth on your face or if you sweat indeed. And I understand from what you were saying that there's also, will have observed some changes at a kind of cellular level, at a kind of microscopic level.
So why are cells so vulnerable to heat like this? What is it can happen?
Well, our cells are full of proteins, like an egg white. Think about it like an egg white. And if you heat them up, they cook, they change, we call it denaturing. And those impacts, that damage doesn't really go back. So that's a really serious impact of extreme heat, which I hope your body didn't experience too much of.
I mean, did it feel scary in effect?
Look, I'm a still relatively young and fit person, but I really felt pushed to the limit, having spent just, less than 2 hours in there. And it really does make you think about people who are living this 24/7 with no respite overnight and trying to get on with daily activity. And it was the activities that really did stress my body.
Well, Anna, talk to us about the kind of population risks here, particularly in the UK when we get these unusual heat events.
Last year we saw 40 degrees, which was unforeseeable in a situation outside of climate change. That was caused by the climate crisis. People, as you say, who are fit and well can tolerate this, can manage this, their bodies can cope, but people who have underlying health conditions will definitely suffer more.
Give me a bit of a rundown of the vulnerable here then.
Oh, so well, if you have anything that's going to alter your physiology, so if you're living with diabetes, if you're living with high blood pressure, we've talked about the changes in the blood pressure already, that your body was trying to maintain that blood pressure in the face of these widened blood vessels. If you've also got problems with blood pressure which pre-exist, then that's going to be even harder to do. People with diabetes also tend to have problems with the nervous system, which controls those mechanisms as well. So it's another kind of barrier to being able to maintain the normal body conditions.
How well prepared or trained is our medical system, is the NHS for this?
So the heat alerts have been available for since 2004. I think they've been putting out heat alerts in order to be able to coordinate a response.
But is it part of medical school?
It's not part of medical school. We don't really learn this stuff. So I had a student last year in her 4th year who we looked at doing a project on the climate crisis and diabetes, or diabetes as a climate change problem, and all the stuff she learned, she went away and researched it herself, but it was all new to her. It wasn't part of her curriculum.
You mentioned it briefly, but I just let's hear it for sweating. People think sweating is a bad thing. I mean, it's a total lifesaver, isn't it? I mean, you did okay because it was pretty low humidity, so sweating works well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we each have something like 1.5 to 5 million sweat glands, and their job is to try and regulate our body temperature. If you are evaporating water, that change from liquid to vapour sucks a lot of heat out of your body, and that's what's going on, and that's really important in staying cool.
Thomas Moore, Dr. Anna Moore, no relation, thank you very much indeed. Well, this week marks a year since we had those extraordinary temperatures here in the UK, and a village just outside of London of Wennington caught fire, 20 homes destroyed. And this week we've seen extraordinary temperatures in the south of Europe, particularly Greece, Italy and Spain, well into the high 40s. On the outskirts of the Greek capital Athens, thousands of residents have been evacuated as fires intensified this week. The fire service said strong and changeable winds, along with the extreme temperatures and mountainous terrain, slowed firefighting efforts. Well, I'm joined by our foreign correspondent Alex Rossi, who's in Greece, just outside Athens, about 40 or so kilometres away. And at the moment, he's in a car because we've had problems with gear overheating there, Alex.
That's right, we are in a car. It's really hot outside, although it's actually cooler than it's going to be. It's only 38 degrees, so fairly mild today. But we're expecting temperatures here to reach, 44, 45 degrees. Now, as you were explaining, our phones, every time we go outside for more than about 5 minutes, just cut out, they overheat. So we've had to come in here to cool things off on the air conditioning, but I'll take you outside now and show you some of the devastation of what's happened with these wildfires. You'll have seen those really dramatic pictures. Now, much of it has been contained at the moment. There are still reignitions going on. Over here you can see the police, the fire service, and also the military as well. We've just seen a pump out trying to damp down some flames over there, but look at this. This is all scorched earth. This was forest a few days ago, but you can see it just spread through here really quickly.
Give me a feeling about how people are kind of both reacting to this, and now we've had some very high temperatures in the Mediterranean for a few years now. Let's talk about preparation first. Is there any evidence of preparation for these kind of events?
Well, clearly they don't have enough to deal with what we're witnessing at the moment, because they've asked the European Union for assistance. We're seeing firefighters and equipment coming from Slovakia, Poland, France, Italy, amongst other nations. But it's not enough. They need more. And in terms of Greece, it's probably the country in the European Union that's least adequately equipped.
What are their sort of climate policies like there? Are they deploying a lot of renewable energy? Are they cutting down on fossil fuels? Is there pressure to do that there?
On one level, like lots of places, there's pressure to do that, but there's also this kind of sense of powerlessness that actually the steps that Greece takes alone are not really going to change things with any sense of proportion to what is going on. So that is the kind of difficulty that they are finding themselves in.
Just before we go, Alex, brief weather forecast. Any sight of rain or cooler air in sight?
No, it's not looking particularly good. They've already gone through one heat wave here. The second one is starting now, and they think that those temperatures are going to peak towards the end of the week, Sunday, and there are predictions of 44, 45 degrees.
Alex Rossi, thank you very much indeed. You better get back inside that car before either you or your gear melts. But thanks very much for your time. Now, should one of the world's poorest countries be allowed to exploit those fossil fuels in order to keep much of its population alive? That's the case being made by South Sudan. It's the world's newest country, having declared independence from the rest of Sudan in 2011. But natural disasters and the COVID-19 pandemic have hampered economic growth, and more than 3/4 of its population depend on aid. South Sudan has the third biggest oil reserves in sub-Saharan Africa, and its government is looking for investment to exploit them. I've been speaking to South Sudan's Petroleum Minister, Puot Kang Chol, about why he believes that should be allowed to happen.
Our focus is so much on developing what we have at hand, and what we have at hand at the moment is the fossil fuel. We are cognizant of the fact that the world is transiting from fossil fuel to a clean and greener energy. We are not opposed to that. We are for it. But we are saying there is need for us to develop the fossil fuel, because that is the only thing that we have at hand at the moment, so that it allows us to be able to develop the other sources of energy, like power sources.
Right, so you see it as a stepping stone into more renewable energies, because you have hydro
Absolutely.
maybe and
Absolutely.
solar.
We use it as a catalyst for development of other sectors.
Yeah.
And that is the only stepping stone that we have at the moment. And that's why we are here to say, for those of you who are outside there who have the resources, who have what it takes, come help us develop these resources at hand, so that we move with the world together when the world is transiting.
Right, we'll come into the justification of it for later, but for people who don't know South Sudan, I think it's about 2/3 of your country are living in poverty, so they rely on humanitarian assistance. So the need for development, the need for money is great in your country.
That is very true. That is very true. Our budget, as I'm talking to you, the budget is in Parliament. It depends on oil by 85%. Meaning we have to develop it more, we have to produce more, so that we meet the daily needs of our people.
Is
yes,
oil
that
keeping
is very
people,
true.
Yeah, is oil keeping people alive?
It's the
in
oil
South
that is keeping our people
Yeah.
alive. And as I speak to you, you rightly put it, most of our people depend on aids that come from other taxpayers. We as a government, we wanted to take care of our own people. And the only way to do that is for us to develop fossil fuel, so that we generate money from it and go into other sources, other sectors like agriculture.
But South Sudan is being affected by climate change. You've had floods, you've had extreme weather. You know the damage that too much use of oil and gas is doing, and yet you say you need to exploit more of it when you can feel the damage.
That is quite true, but let me also come from this angle. The world is transiting from the use of fossil fuel for those who have used it. We have to use it. Our contribution is zero. We are not saying that we are not being affected, but we are saying for us to be able to transit, we will need to have resources at hand. And the only resource that we have in our hand today is fossil fuel. What we are asking from the rest of the world is to say, you have the money, come help us invest in the production of our oil by using the right technology. And one of the reasons why I'm in the UK is to say, we can use the right technology so that we produce oil and venture into other sources of energy.
I can't stand here in my position and say, you shouldn't do this when lots of your countrymen and women are living in poverty. I can see that it's essential, but I also feel the difficulty in sort of saying, oh, we'll just use oil for a bit. It's a sort of necessary evil, you're saying, before we transition.
I wouldn't say it's necessary evil. If you come to Africa, it's not only necessary, it's more than necessary. Because the whole continent, as I speak to you, is still in darkness, somehow. And we are not blind, we are not saying that we don't see the impact or the negative impact of it. But we are saying which death comes first? Which death is more lovely? Is it you dying of poverty, or you dying because of climate change, whatever it costs? Death is death at the end of the day. So how do we get there?
Do you sometimes think that organisations or individuals who say that you shouldn't develop your oil, that it's another form of colonialism, it's another form of us in Europe telling you in Africa what to do?
I'm ready to negotiate with anybody that is saying, don't produce. We know the estimate of what we have. If someone somewhere is ready to pay us off, we will be more than happy. And in fact, our president will be ready to say, keep it under the ground, because all we need is money to change the life of our people. And if somebody is willing to give us that money, we will be willing to let it go.
After the break, we'll be taking a look at a fossil-free fuel, but one with a hefty price tag. Welcome back. You may remember at the end of the last show we said that this week we were going to be at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. Well, sadly, some of that event was cancelled due to extraordinarily high winds. Why go to that kind of gas-guzzling event anyway, you might ask? Well, because this year they're showcasing the potential of synthetic fuels, which are being touted by some as the saviour of the internal combustion engine.
But here he is now, going up in this iconic car.
Is this motorsport without the climate guilt? Powering up Goodwood's iconic hill climb, the engine is running on e-fuel, a synthetic blend made from hydrogen drawn from water and carbon from the air. Four-time Formula One world champion Sebastian Vettel is behind the wheel and the change.
The world is changing, so you know, we don't have to give up on these things. We can still hold on, but do it in a more responsible way.
Doing the donuts.
Much of our attachment to the engine comes from its proud position in our heritage, lovingly displayed at the Brooklands Museum. But even here, they are thinking of sneaking in changes under the bonnet.
We started having some conversations with some synthetic fuel manufacturers last year. I guess for museums, because of the irreplaceability of our collections and because we need to be very careful about risk, we're probably going to be more followers than leaders in that area.
And when it comes to the legacy of the internal combustion engine and what we know now, do you feel conflicted?
I guess in some ways, in that I wish the world wasn't here, and some of the things that were developed at Brooklands have contributed to that. On the other hand, I think Brooklands showed that challenges can be overcome, that new solutions can be found, that things can be improved.
I get it. I get the nostalgia. I love sitting in here. I have huge admiration for the design and the engineering brilliance. The question is, what place does the internal combustion engine have in our future? There is only one company in the UK who are actually making synthetic fuels. Hi, thanks for having me in. This is an amazing place. Paddy Lowe is something of a legend in the high-octane world of Formula One. He's had top technical roles with big teams, clocking up an impressive 12 world championships. Now he's opening a cleaner chapter with Zero Petroleum, producing what they say is a completely emission-free liquid fuel.
So we have solar panels bringing energy down from the sun into these units, where we split water into its constituents, into H2 and oxygen.
But that's just the start. They still need the carbon part, and for that they're planning to pull it from the atmosphere using direct air capture, another energy-hungry process. Despite this facility not being finished, these synthetic fuels are already being made and used for real, with plans for a full-scale plant by 2025.
So Tom, we are going to show you the running of a model jet engine, and it's burning our synthetic jet fuel. You probably better wear some earplugs, and we better back off.
We'll back off. Oh, yeah. I'm intrigued now.
Okay. There you go. Just like an airport.
Zero Petroleum has been tested in the sky too. Along with the RAF, they hold the Guinness World Record for the first flight powered on synthetic fuel. But apart from planes and chainsaws, where is synthetic fuel going?
It's more a question of where will it not be used, actually, to be honest. Everywhere we use fossil fuel today, is a very great candidate for synthetic fuels. In fact, we see a day in a few decades where all of the fuel we use today that comes out of the ground from oil wells will be delivered as synthetic, will be made industrially from air and water. The industry will be no smaller, it will be larger than today, in fact.
So you really think the synthetic fuel business could be as big as the oil and gas business today?
Correct.
Wow, that's quite a claim.
Because we are highly dependent on these liquid fuels.
But the advertised price of one of these 20-litre cans is £50,000. That figure will drop, but it's likely to remain a costly solution.
I mean, everything new is expensive to start with. You know, the first motor car was horrifically expensive compared to running a horse and cart. We model that we will be making fuel at the same cost as fossil fuel today within a decade.
So this ultra-clean, very modern warehouse could be the start of something, well, globe-trotting.
Yeah, we see this as really the start of something huge. You know, our staff are so excited and passionate about what we're doing here because we're really here to start changing the world.
And Paddy isn't the only one whose background has a high carbon count. Zero has 44 members of staff, some from F1 and others from the oil and gas sector, wanting to use their skills to make a difference to the world.
It rather takes out the carbon dioxide from the environment, and then we are utilizing it to make something beneficial to the society. So it gives me that guilt-free to know that I'm doing something right to kind of add to the environment. If not damaging it, at least I'm saving the world in my own way.
While synthetic fuels could be the answer to decarbonising old classics and possibly motorsport,
no, I absolutely love watching Formula One.
Yeah. Most experts say the physics and economics of synthetic replacements present a huge hurdle.
I see synthetic fuels as having a role in some sectors that are harder to decarbonise, like aviation. I don't really see a role for them in powering cars of the future. It sounds simple. You take hydrogen from water, you take carbon from the air, and you combine them together and produce e-fuels. But it actually requires huge amounts of energy. In fact, from producing electricity to powering a car, you need 5 times as much electricity to produce e-fuels than you do just simply putting electricity into the battery of an electric vehicle and letting it go on its way. And that means 5 times as many wind turbines, solar panels, and that costs a lot of money.
Museums and airlines might bear that cost, but cars on your driveway, that seems a long way off. Well, in contrast to those rather complex engineering stories and wild weather from around the world, we have an out-and-out cheery wildlife story. The first white-tailed eagle chick to be born in England for 240 years.
The white-tailed eagle is a species that was eradicated by human persecution, and the last pair bred on the Isle of Wight in 1780. So this project is a partnership between the Roy Denison Wildlife Foundation and Forestry England to restore this really iconic bird to the south coast of England. Birds of prey are quite slow to recover their range when they've been lost from an area, because basically young white-tailed eagles like to return to the place where they were reared in order to breed. This project involves moving a small number of chicks from Scotland down to the Isle of Wight so that they regard that part of the south coast as home. So it's really encouraging that at this early stage we've already got a pair breeding. And there are 2 other pairs established. They've not reared young this year, but they're on territories. So we're really encouraged for the future.
Well, that's it for this week. Remember, you can keep across all your environment and climate news on the Sky News website and app, or by scanning the QR code that's on your screen right now. Cheerio, see you next week.